Hello, today I'm going to introduce you to Poland. So let's start the presentation. Let's see the outline of the presentation first. What I'm going to talk about, going to talk about geography of Poland. I'm going to talk about the origins of the name Polska or Poland, how big Poland is, and we'll compare Poland and Michigan. We'll talk about neighboring countries, plains, mountains, and bodies of water, major cities, administrative division of Poland. Poland is divided into 16 voivodeships, but there's more to it, historical regions, and then we'll talk about integration of Poland with Western Europe. And it was one of the main goals of Poland after the fall of communism in 1989 to integrate with Western Europe. Poland was a communist state from the time after the Second World War, which ended in 1945 till this year, 1989. And the elements of this integration were the NATO, and Poland was admitted into the NATO in 1999. The EU, Poland was admitted into the EU in 2004. The Schengen area, Poland has been a member since 2007. And the euro, and Poland is not yet there. Poland did not adopt the euro. It's still using its own currency, which is called zloty, abbreviated as PLN. And we'll talk a little bit about political system. So let's start. So you see Poland here, that the map of the country, you see most of it is green because most of it is plain. But when we go south, we see some highlands and some mountains there in the south. In the north, we have the Baltic Sea. Polish neighbor to the west is Germany. To the south, we have Czech Republic and Slovakia. And you might know that there was a country, Czechoslovakia, where all these two countries were together. Then we have in the east, we have Ukraine, Belarus, then Lithuania, and we have here Kaliningrad is the name of a city, but this is Russia. And here we see the national emblem of Poland. As you can see, it's a white eagle against the red backdrop, and the eagle has a crown. So what are the origins of the name Poland? Pole, the word pole in Polish means a field, like a field in which you would grow rye, wheat, oats, and so on. But also Polanie is a name of one of the early Polish tribes. So the etymology of the name of the tribe is Pole. So they call themselves field dwellers. And Polanie, together with another tribe, Wiślanie, formed the very first Polish principality around 10th century. So Poland as a state goes back to 966. 966, when Mieszko I decided to get baptized, and that was the beginning of Polish state, 966. Here in this map, you can see these two tribes, Polanie or Polans, and Wistulans or Wiślanie, as I referred to them. But there are other tribes on this map too, other tribes which together with Poles are Western Slavic people. And we have Sorbs, which is a small minority in Germany now. We have, for instance, this Veleti, which don't exist anymore, and other tribes. I just would like to point out to you that now the border between Poland and Germany is right here on this river Odra. But as you see in history, Slavic people went past Odra River, more into today's Germany. And now this river is really a border between Germanic and Slavic people. And let's compare Poland and Michigan. if you look at these numbers, you see that Poland, the area of Poland is roughly 1/3 bigger than Michigan, and population is about 4 times as large as the population of Michigan. However, population of Poland is decreasing in recent years, while population of Michigan is increasing. Let's look a little bit at the rivers of Poland. So we'll look at the longest rivers, and the longest river in Poland is called Wisła or Vistula. It's actually its Latin name. And look, it starts here and has the shape of a letter S and goes all the way to the Baltic Sea. And you can see that some major cities, like the capital of Poland, Warsaw, are located on Wisła River. Also Gdańsk, it's still a beautiful old city, but in the past it was one of the richest cities in Polish territories. And of course, Kraków is located on the river Wisła as well. And we have Odra. Odra starts in the Czech Republic and goes all the way to the Baltic Sea. Szczecin, very big city, is located on Odra, also Wrocław, which was called in part of its history Breslau, because this part of Poland used to belong to Germany. And Warta is a tributary of Odra, and Poznań is located on Warta. Poznań, and that's the cradle of Poland, this area here near Poznań. Another river which I would like to mention is the river Bug. Starts in Ukraine, and here we have Bug, and as you can see, part of the border between Poland and Ukraine is right there on the Bug River. So Wisła is the longest river in Poland. Mountains, and I mentioned that the mountains are in the south, and we have the Sudety, as we call them in Polish, or Sudetic or Sudeten. Sudeten is actually a German name. Here on the border between Poland and Czech Republic, and Carpathian Mountains, which are not only in Poland, but also Ukraine, Slovakia, go further south. The highest sub-range of the Carpathian Mountains are Tatry Mountains. Poland shares, as I said, with Slovakia, but Slovakia has the vast majority of the Tatras. Now I'm going to show you a few places in Poland, and these blue arrows indicate where they are. So first the Baltic Sea, then Gdańsk, then Mazuria, then Białowieża, I will explain what it is, then Warsaw or Warszawa, then Kraków, then the Tatry Mountains, and then Sudety Mountains. So this is the Baltic Sea, as you see, very popular destination during the summertime for vacations. And that's what the beach looks like quite often on a beautiful day. You can see beautiful cliffs. And you might know that amber comes from the Baltic Sea. Not only, there are other places in the world, but the Baltic is one of them, and it comes in many colors. And importance of amber for Poland, let me just tell you that amber is really what put Poland on the map. In pre-Christian times, in the 2nd century, when merchants traveled, they traveled from southern Europe through Poland all the way here north, and they traveled to buy amber. So that's therefore this route is called the amber route, and the city of Kalisz or Galicia, as mentioned by its Latin name, was first mentioned and put on the map. So this is Gdańsk, as I mentioned, very prosperous city in the past, and this prosperity came mostly from the grain trade. And as you notice, Wisła really flows through entire Poland, so it was used in the past for shipments of grains, like in 15th, 16th, 17th century. Beautiful old city, also known for solidarity, because the labor union Solidarity was born in Gdańsk in 1980, and this union contributed significantly to the toppling of communism in 1989. Not far from Gdańsk, you can visit Malbork Castle, built by the Teutonic Knights, completed in the early 1400s, and it's the largest by square footage castle in the entire world, and it is one of the 16 UNESCO World Heritage Sites which are located in Poland. Also in the northern Poland, we have Frombork, and that's where Nicholas Copernicus worked as a canon, and that's where he developed his heliocentric theory. We're still staying in the north, so Mazury, the Mazuria region. It's one of the most beautiful regions in Poland, and it was even on the short list of 14 finalists in the global voting campaign for the new 7 Wonders of Nature, which was done in 2011. So I mentioned already that Poland has 16 World Heritage Sites. And as you see, there are 2 types of them. One type is cultural and the second type are natural. And we see that 15 of these sites which are located in Poland belong to the cultural category, only one to nature, and it is Białowieża. And you see Auschwitz-Birkenau is here, Malbork, which I mentioned, Kraków, Warsaw too, and other places. So let's see what this Białowieża is about. It is one of Poland's 23 national parks, and it's the last primeval forest in Europe. And why it survived? It survived because there was a lot of hunting done, but hunting was done by royalty. Average people could not hunt there, but only it was preserved for royal hunting. When Poland was under partition, Russian Tsars hunted there. You can see this very beautiful, splendid animal there, which is called the żubr in Polish, or its Polish bison is the largest European mammal. Also these very interesting horses, Pole indigenous breed, the Polish horse. Not an indigenous breed, the Arabian horses, but I couldn't resist putting the slide in, because if you are visiting this region, you might as well see the places where these Arabian horses are bred, and Poland has been famous for breeding great Arabian horses. We are traveling south, we're going to Warsaw, which has been the capital of Poland since 1596. This is an old town. Interesting information about this old town is, one of the many, of course, is that it was almost completely ruined during the Second World War, and it was rebuilt to look exactly like it used to. So before Warsaw became capital of Poland, Kraków was capital of Poland. And of course, Warsaw is where Polish parliament meets. If you look at this room, and it's a room for the House of Representatives, it has a cross here. And in Poland, according to constitution, there is division between the state and the church. However, well, we'll read about it. This division is crossed a lot. For some Poles, this cross here is quite controversial. Others say that because a vast majority of Polish people are Christian people, Catholics, as a matter of fact, then they should be able to have this cross in that very room. Well, you can see me here. So you can see the group of students who in 2019 traveled to Poland with me on 2-week-long study abroad in May. And that was, I think, trip number 16, which for me. And one of the highlights of the trip is the visit of to Polish Parliament. And this is Kraków. Kraków is a former capital of Poland, but even when the capital was moved to Warsaw, still coronations of the kings took place in Kraków. It's one of the most popular tourist destinations in Europe, the first university in Poland and one of the very first in Central Europe, was established there in 1364. And it's known now as the Jagiellonian University. It happened to be a university where I studied. And in 2020, it was ranked as the #1 university in Poland. And I mentioned Central Europe, and I would like you to remember that that's how Polish people when they talk about Poland, they say Poland is a Central European state. And if you look at the map, that's very obvious that Poland is a Central European state, not Eastern European state, although it's quite often referred to as Eastern European state. And in the very, very south, the Tatra Mountains or Tatra Mountains, this photo I took during one of the study abroad trips. When we were lucky and the weather permitted, we took a beautiful hike to this lake. And Sudety are older mountains than the Tatras, much more eroded. They are, as you might remember, on the border between Poland and Czech Republic, more of the Sudety. I mentioned already that Poland is divided into 16 provinces, that's the administrative division of Poland. These provinces, you see the provinces. In Poland, they're called województwa, so we have this kind of strange English word. And each of these is divided into counties, which in Polish are called powiaty, and each of these powiat is divided into gminy, or they could be translated as municipalities. But when you read about Poland, when you talk with people about Poland, quite often they would refer to the place of their residence, or when they talk about Polish history, they don't use these names of provinces, but they use the names of historical regions. And here I put 6 labels: Mazury or Mazuria, Pomerania, which could be divided into Western Pomerania and Gdańsk Pomerania, Greater Poland, that's where Poland started with Poznań, Silesia, which could be divided in Lower Silesia and Upper Silesia with Katowice, where a lot of coal. Poland has big resource of black coal. Using this resource is quite difficult nowadays with global warming. So it's Silesia, Małopolska or Lesser Poland, Kraków and Lublin are here in this part, Mazowsze or Mazovia, which is a region around Warsaw, Polish capital, and Podlasie, which I didn't label, but here it is. So why do we still have this region? So this region go back to prehistorical times, to times when in this land different tribes lived, and they correspond somewhat to these lands where these different tribes lived. So there's still some differences as far as cuisine, as far as attires, like folk attires, music, there are different dialects there too, and so on. And now let's talk a little bit about this integration, which I mentioned at the very beginning, that Poland, after fall of communism, really wanted to be integrated with Western Europe, and how this integration happened. This integration happened through Poland being admitted to different European organizations or institutions. And the very first one, which Poland was able to be admitted to, was NATO, which was founded in 1949 with the purpose to secure peace in Europe and to promote cooperation among its members and to guard their freedom. All of this in the context of countering the threat posed at the time by the Soviet Union. So like beginning of the Cold War, the Soviets are perceived as a big threat, and there is this competition in arms and so on. So NATO was created, as I read to you, to secure peace in Europe. Currently, NATO consists of 30 countries. And here you have the timeline and which countries were admitted to NATO. Here is Poland, 1999. So it was 50th anniversary of existence of NATO, together with Czech Republic and Hungary. So we see which countries. We see Turkey, for instance, is a member of NATO. It's not a member of the EU. And speaking about the EU, there was also Polish ambition of Poland to become the member of the EU. Currently, we have 27 countries. Again, the idea of the EU of establishing such an organization was So here you have it in bold, being the countries that trade with one another become economically interdependent and so more likely to avoid conflict. So it was again lesson learned from the Second World War. So if countries, for instance, like Germany and France, and there were a lot of conflicts here in the 20th century and not only. So if they are together with in the European Union, then this conflict would not exist anymore. And it's a very successful organization and successful in bringing this peace and keeping peace in Europe. And that's why the EU was even awarded a Nobel Peace Prize. So here, Poland was admitted in the year 2004, together with 9 other states, and they were some of them were former Soviet republics, such as Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary. I would like to mention, because I mentioned that Poland borders Russia, but look, this is like a very little sliver of Russia. This is Russia here. Huge, the biggest country in the world, by the way. So it's a little sliver which Russia decided to keep to have access to the Baltic Sea. And the latest country which was admitted to the EU is Croatia. Another tool of that integration and another very interesting organization which unifies Europe is the Schengen area. So what is the Schengen area? Schengen area is area without borders. So it was a longer project. Schengen's name of a village in Luxembourg, where initially this agreement was signed, initially by 5 EU countries, and then it expanded and expanded. Currently 26 member states. Poland was admitted to Schengen zone in 2007. So what does it mean in practical terms? It means that, for instance, if we want to travel to Poland, let's travel to Kraków, to my home city. So we board a plane in Detroit, and we have to stop over somewhere because we don't have direct flights from Detroit to Kraków. So let's stop in Netherlands, in Amsterdam. That's what we did with this group, which I showed you in Warsaw during study abroad. So we stopped in Amsterdam. We actually stayed good part of the day in Amsterdam. So in Amsterdam, we have to go through passport control. We get a stamp, and this stamp admits us to the whole area. So once we get on the plane and travel to Poland, once we land in Poland, our passports are not checked anymore. And it's pretty amazing because, well, for instance, if you go from Poland to Germany, there's no border whatsoever. If you travel by car, there is speed limits which you need to obey and slow down a little bit, but that's about it. There's nothing more, no control, nothing. So that's how the Schengen area works. Very convenient for travelers, and it promotes integration of Europe. Another instrument of this integration in the single currency called the euro was introduced in 2002. These are the countries which currently use euro. You can see that Slovakia and the Baltic states are using euro. Poland is not using euro, it's still using its own currency. Why Poland did not switch to euro, it's a longer topic, which I'm not going to cover right now. You can explore it on your own. When Poland first became the member of the EU, Poland was not economically at the level that Poland didn't qualify to adopt euro at that time. Now, definitely Poland is qualified, meaning that deficit is at a certain level, inflation is at a certain level, economy is at a certain level, but there is no political will to adopt the euro. And Polish notes, Poland of course has coins too, but it's 150 złotych, 200 złotych, these are Polish notes. At the very end of this presentation, I would like to tell you just a little bit about Polish parliamentary system. This is the presidential palace in Warsaw with Polish flags, white and red, Polish emblem. And that's not where the parliament meets. this is where the president, the head of the state, resides. The parliament is a different building located in different parts of Warsaw, not far. So we have two chambers of parliament. Lower chamber of the House of Representatives has 460 members, and these members are elected every 4 years. And it's not like in the United States when you don't elect all of them at once. In Poland, you do. So every 4 years, theoretically, these could be completely different people. The same goes with the Senate, the upper house of the parliament, which has 100 members. And again, all of them could be replaced with different people every 4 years. As you also can see, that the party which has the majority in Polish parliament, and especially in the Sejm, is the party Law and Justice. And the second time they won the elections. It's quite unprecedented, and having such a majority in Polish parliament is unprecedented. They have absolute majority, 235 seats, so more than half of the seats of parliament they have. Very easy for them to vote in a new regulation. And Polish Senate, again, Law and Justice has the majority, but it's 48, so it doesn't have 50%. And it's just short too, but it's very important. So opposition has stronger voice in Polish Senate than in Polish Sejm. And let me tell you a little bit about the presidential elections in Poland. Presidential elections in Poland are held every 5 years, and Polish people elect the president in direct elections. Last elections were held in June and July of this year, 2020. And we see Andrzej Duda, the incumbent president, who won the elections for a second time. He is on the left, and on the right is his opponent, Rafał Trzaskowski. So thank you very much. That was my introduction to Poland.